All right, welcome everyone to our 5 o'clock work session. We have a packed agenda tonight since we missed our previous scheduled meeting because it was election night. Our first item of business is a financial update from our CFO, Chris Pickle. Ms. Pickle?
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening. I might want to fix your microphone so there it is.
So the first thing that I want to do is give an update on the ARPA funds. So that's the American Rescue Plan Act. So far I hadn't given an update on that because this happened like few years before I came to work for the city. But I've gotten a good grasp on where we stand. So in 2021, the city of Red Bank was awarded a grant under the American Rescue Plan Act for $3,513,087. The funds were applied for and accepted under the category of revenue replacement. So that category of revenue replacement meets the requirements of obligating the funds. Also, under this category, up to $10 million in grant funds may be allocated and spent as the commission determines the best to serve the city as a whole. The allocation of funds was established in 2022 by resolution, and I think that you guys have a copy of that resolution.
Oh, your resolution.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I'm reading from now.
Mm-hmm.
The resolution is, yes, page 4 and 5. And that just outlined what the commission and the city intended to spend those funds on. To date, $2,715,920 of grant funds have been spent, and that leaves $797,158 remaining funds. And as you can see, I broke it down here. So you can see what each of the categories was that the money was spent and what is remaining. And then there's also, this page I think was loose because in the packet it was very, very light. It was hard to see. So I just gave you guys each a better copy of that so you can see it. And then just for the normal update, not the ARPA update, but the normal. As you can see, things are going as expected. The revenues are total at 17% for the general fund. And that's normal. That is what we expect for this time of year because it's kind of like bottomed out pretty much. But then it's actually starting to do the upswing now. So we've only had 2 months of payments on the taxes and the sanitation and stormwater so far. The expenditures are actually at 31%, which is under by about 2% as what was expected to be spent at this time. So that's really good. And all the other funds are performing as expected. Some of them are under, well, most of all of them are under for the expenditures and under, of course, for the revenue, the same reason that it's just a low in the time of year. You have any questions?
Regarding the ARPA funds, so all of the funds have been allocated.
Yes.
We're still following our spending plan that we passed by resolution in 2021, 2022. 22. We're following all the reporting requirements from the state and federal government. So are we under any threat of having to pay back a single penny of the ARPA?
No, they're not at risk. No.
What about that $37?
Well, we did spend that.
Can we order a pizza or something?
Qualified expenditure. All right. Any other questions for Ms. Pickle?
Well, when will we have this all spent? I know we got to have it done by the 26th, right? Is that what?
But yeah, by December 31st of 2026, I expect it'll be spent next calendar year by then.
Yeah, well, we're pretty good at spending money then, ain't we?
Yes.
We put it to use.
Yep.
Yes.
We are effectively investing the funds so that they don't have to be returned.
Well, yeah.
Exactly. The funds from the beginning have been in the local government investment pool, so LGIP. So they've actually been earning interest as well. So we ended up with more than what we had in the beginning.
There are 3 blues of this funds spent. Is the salary the far left or the middle or?
It's the first one.
Okay, all right. And then the middle one is the internet technologies?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
It's hard to tell sometimes.
I'm, well,
They
blue
get
is blue
scanned
and,
Printed out and.
yeah, I thank you
different
for all the
shapes.
colors.
All right, any other questions? Thank you very much, Ms. Pickle.
Thank you.
All right, our next item of business is award digitization of records contract not to exceed $173,000 to RJ Young, resolution number 24-1755. We have Court Clerk Donahue. Yes. Oh, there we go. And our IT manager, Ms. Bradley Rump. Welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, well, I'm Alicia Donahue, I'm the court clerk. During the year 2022, the city commission identified as a commission goal the concept of digital transformation in the city's internal records and document creation, processing, and preservation systems. Shortly after I became the court clerk, I began thinking about goals and what direction I would like to take the court. One of my biggest goals was to update the procedures and technology to better serve the community. So back in March, if you guys will remember, March of 23, we took a tour of the archives building. And as you were all able to see, when you toured that facility, it was not the best solution for storing our records.
Hi, I'm Stacy Bradley Rump, the IT manager for the city of Red Bank. I would like to present resolution number 24-1755 regarding the authorization and approval of an agreement with RJ Young to implement an electronic and computer accessible document records digitalization system and process for the city of Red Bank. The administration identified the intended first steps of the digitalization process. The city clerk's office was identified as being in need of immediate attention. During February 2024, the administration finalized and put out for bid or request for proposal, process, and finely tuned set of specifications. 2 responses were received because of the February 2024 bid or request for proposal process. After careful review and consideration, it was determined to be unacceptable. The city administration rebid the package and requested proposals in July 2024. 1 bid or proposal was received from RJ Young Technology Solutions. It was determined to meet all requirements and specifications.
So I wanted to explore some options for digitizing our records and move away from storing them in the old rundown building that was kind of smelly and gross. Where they are currently stored, the records are susceptible to damage by nature. Example, the floods we had years ago, and the possibility of fire, as well as the minimal security of the building. We currently have around 200 boxes containing 500 to 1,000 cases in each. And right now, if someone requests a record that's older than 5 years, we have to go out to the archive building to pull those. And it can take a little bit longer for various reasons, depending on the workload of the day or what day of the week they may request it. While it is well organized, sometimes it takes a while to find a file due to us maybe pulling it and not properly returning it over the years. And so with our records being digitized, we'll be able to provide quicker service to the community and not expose ourselves to the conditions of the archives building. So through conversations about these goals, I was tasked with leading the way for the city of Red Bank to begin digitizing our records. So Stacy and I faced that challenge head on and began the process of procuring the means to make this happen.
The funding for the digitalization project system and contract in an amount of $144,596. Together with a contingency not to exceed 10% upon approval, comes from the previous designated ARPA funds. The digitalization system for the city court's office continuing operations and services thereafter will be funded from the city court's annual operations budget in the estimated amount of $1,393.15 per month. Once other departments begin implementing digitalization, this month the cost will be divided amongst those departments. We'd like to open up the floor for any questions at this time.
So you noted that it was, the highest need was the court clerk records that needed to be digitized. But are we planning to digitize other city department records, like our old minute books, that go back to 1955 that are sitting in our city recorder's office, and other documents like that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
They'll take it. I believe the plan is to take it one department at a time.
Okay.
So this is the total cost for all departments? Not just the court clerk,
This is the total cost for year one
court clerk.
for the court clerk.
Mhm.
The annual cost is the entire city. So that's the cloud and the storage for.
That's that monthly fee.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and just so that I'm just clear on this, because, when I scanned all of my stuff, like in my thing, we get a document, we scanned it and just put it in the file on the, server. Is that what you all will be doing, or will they be continuing to do this from now on? I mean, in other words, is there where we scan our documents and then put them in a file by ourselves, or this all be RJ Young going forward?
So, the concept is a Azure government cloud, so the documents will be scanned into that government cloud.
Okay,
And Alicia would then go through, and I'll let her talk about that.
Day
to the
four, we'd be doing our own scanning.
okay,
I think that might have been your question.
yeah,
We'll be doing our own scanning day forward, once everything's scanned in.
okay. So this is just getting it,
Yes.
getting us up to speed.
Historical files.
Right.
And may I add a little bit
Please.
to that, Mayor? The strategy that we're operating under is the Tennessee statutes. They are record retention statutes that apply differentially to the various business lines within the city. The court and clerk, the statutes governing retention of court records are unique to the court. When you get into procurements and contract and personnel, there's different levels of record retention. And what that means is that the documents will be destroyed at the end of that required retention. So part of your question was what happens to the paper when it's scanned? The document destruction and recording of that destruction is also a part of this process in accordance with Tennessee statutes. And I would add that it's not so much in the court piece, but when we get to other departments, there'll be a public self-service access to some of this information as well. And the Vice Mayor mentioned minutes of commission meetings. There'll be paths that will allow people to go directly on their own to get those records. So that's another benefit of digitizing all this wealth of information that really goes back to the beginning of the city in some cases.
Well, I just can't believe it's taken us this long. I mean, this is something we've done 10, 15 years ago, you know, so.
Better late than never.
Well, I know, I mean, but it's one of those things of, you know, you got to put the investment in. I mean, it's one of those things, so thank you.
Well, I will add that this is one of the many gifts that comes from the ARPA money. We're not the only, local government who's facing this challenge all across America. So the commission and the previous commission allowed us to make this investment in our processes with those ARPA money, and it's going to pay dividends for forever.
I was gonna say the convenience of being able to access some of these records online without having to submit a public records request will be beneficial to the citizenry. But also, not every little records request having to come through our city hall will be a benefit to our staff, not having to process, hopefully as many requests, the ones that they.
Well, it's like payroll records. You got to keep them till Jesus arrives,
Yes.
you know, so I mean, there's certain things you got to keep
Forever.
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 Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't go away, you know.
Who's trained? There was a line in there about training. Is there one person per department that trains? Or is it
Which one?
you two ladies?
On like scanning the documents.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the RJ Young will be training probably the department heads.
Oh, okay, all right. Thank you.
Commissioner, I'll add to that. We have an administrative infrastructure that will really be doing that work. It's the office manager in police. It's the office manager in public works. And that administration, the top official responsible for that is Director of Administration and Finance / City Recorder Tracy Perry. So, she's the one that carries that responsibility to comply with the statutes for all this records. But she has a team of administrative, superstars in each of the departments who will really be implementing.
Okay.
At least that's our plan.
Except for the fire department.
Well, they turn to Kate. Public Works
Okay.
typically provides the office manager support that the fire department needs. Yeah. And of course, City Hall, for example, our payroll clerk handles their payroll. So that It is a relatively unsupported administratively department, but the fire chief is really good at that. And he has lots of friends and allies in nooks and crannies in the rest of the city.
Excellent.
All right, Amy, go ahead.
Question, excuse me. RJ Young has contracted with us before in another capacity, am I right? And this is separate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Separate contract. Yes.
Okay. Will they continue the other contract as well?
Cloud server management.
Well, I'm not gonna be in the hot seat.
I don't want to put you in the hot seat, just asking.
Well, we have several contracts, right? So each contract's going through a process, right? So they originally provide our IT services, which we've had discussions recently. I think Commissioner Phillips brought up. We'll, once we kind of get through this next phase, we're going to look at that and potentially put that out for rebid just to make sure prices and all were still good in the market there. But so that's one aspect. The other part was AV upgrades, a lot of AV upgrades. We bid that out. And RJ Young won those bids, so that was it. So then they put out a separate bid for this digitization. And I think this last time, RJ Young was the only one that submitted. A lot of that has to do, I think, with some of the requirements for security and all that. And I don't want to mislead you. I'm not sure how exactly this software is going to work, but all the information may not be accessible to just the general public online because it's court records, so there's private information. So I want to reassure that we're not going to have an arrest record that's going to have somebody's date of birth, the social security number, driver's license, and all that. You know, we can't do that. So I don't know if they have software.
Ours is not.
You know, right. Yeah. So it'll be easier to access for sure. So, and then the training is basically we decide who's trained, right? So initially, because it's court, they'll be trained, and then it would also be good for us to go ahead and other departments to have representatives there, but we'll have a handful of people that are involved with that.
Before you sit down, Chief.
I know, I stopped.
I will add.
That's
Excellent question, Commissioner. Regarding the procurement of our IT managed services, we are waiting to get through our migration to the cloud and the what's the other phrase?
the domain.
Domain unification. Yeah, we're kind of mid-flight on that one. That's a heavy lift, and that will probably take another couple of months or so to play out. Then when we land in this new state, would be an opportunity to rebid that managed services and just see what the market does. I will tell you, I get calls every day, and I'm sure the chief does, from vendors who are interested in taking over that role. So RJ Young will have to sharpen their pencil, and I'm sure they will, but that's a healthy process, and we're waiting for that time to be right for us to do that.
For the IT
For
and
the IT
the AV
managed
work,
services.
or the IT.
The IT.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions for our illustrious IT and courts team? Okay, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Our next item of business is appoint Jordan Hayes to the Board of Floodplain Review, agenda item number 24-878. Community Development Director Johnson.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This is an item that does not require formal action by this board. This is for informational purposes. But it does tie into the bigger picture of one of the initiatives that we're working on. So the Red Bank Floodplain Review Board was established by ordinance, which is in compliance with the National Flood Insurance Program of which the city participates in. So it consists of 3 members that are appointed by our city manager with staggered terms. Mr. Jordan Hayes is a Red Bank citizen, and he is also a professional licensed civil engineer who has more than 10 years of experience in what he identifies as flood risk and mitigation modeling. Several months ago, Mr. Hayes had expressed interest in the city's efforts towards stormwater management, and he initiated a conversation, introduced himself to the city manager and to myself. We engaged in that, and Martin and I both decided if there was an opportunity to onboard him on one of our boards, he would be a good person to communicate with. So we did that. Again, he submitted an application, have everything on board, and so officially either has or will, the city manager will appoint Mr. Hayes to serve on the Red Bank Floodplain Review Board with the 2 other members who are Bill Cannon and Sonia Miller.
Well, as always, we are fortunate to have such talented and engaged citizens who are willing to donate their time to helping us run our city as best we can.
If I recall, his initiating interest was surrounded around our stormwater asset mapping and management efforts. As much as we've put into that really triggered him to engage with the city. So I'm very appreciative of that effort. It takes a team to make it work.
Well, it's exciting to find someone else who can nerd out on such unsexy topics as that are very important, but not always in the public eye.
Well, I mean, as long as they work for free. You know, it's
We
great to have
thank
citizens that
Mr.
work.
Hayes for his interest and service to our community, willingness to serve.
You're welcome.
No relation. Do you need to recuse yourself? No.
I do not.
Okay.
So I think looking forward, some of the ideas that we have that will come out of our true asset mapping and management plan, one of those recommendations that I will support is the creation of a stormwater advisory board. At that time, then we will see if we can't mesh these two, floodplain and stormwater together hand in hand, to become more active as we start looking at not only what our management plan recommends, but looking at critical repair areas, looking at capital improvement programming. So to have an active board, not just when you have a variance request. That's usually when those boards get activated, when something can't comply with your existing regulations. And we have progressed into more active and engaged citizens for what's happening in Red Bank. So stay tuned for that next step.
Might a stormwater board be involved with credits and incentives program?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, that's something that's much looked forward to in the community.
Yes.
All right, any other questions regarding the appointment to the Board of Floodplain Review? Okay, thank you for your first item of business, Ms. Johnson. Your next is approve agreement with Barge Design Solutions, Inc. for a scope of work to do the Dayton Boulevard right size study, Signal Mountain Road to Gad Road, resolution number 24-1746.
Before I speak to the agenda item, I would like to just bring your attention to the illustration that I put on your desk this evening. If you get uploaded to the website, so it is available for public viewing, as well as there's some copies in the back. But we believe that now would be a good time to give some illustration for supplemental material to a lot of the agenda items, not only tonight, but we have historically been working through. Given the amount of planning initiatives completed, and with several still in progress, I wanted to remind the commission and illustrate to the public how and when planning initiatives are actually turned into actionable items. So I'm not going to go through each one of these. I think we've got a good understanding of what these initiatives really are intended for. But I do want to point out at the bottom, when we talk about lighting the way for multimodal improvements, planning documents need to go into a process for prioritization and funding. So if you'll see on your bottom left, debt service analysis will be on your work session for January 2025. I'm assuming probably the second meeting in January.
Well,
And then
the third Tuesday, because we don't have a first meeting.
there you go. And then rolling down into what we're identifying as your capital improvements plan, which is the CIP, and that becomes project prioritization. And that will happen during your retreat in February. So I just felt it was important to put all of these ideas and initiatives together to understand that commission is the one that likes the way. So, getting back to the agenda item, clarification on this resolution. The one that's presented tonight is not for new contracted services. This is more of a housekeeping item, which is helping me to provide additional transparency, not only to the commission, but to the citizens of Red Bank, as well as to our Tennessee Department of Health, which is where $50,000 of this project is being funded. Again, the contract service is with Barge Design. That total scope of work was $59,100. So take away the $50,000 grant that we have, the $9,100 is coming from budgeted funds from community development.
Okay. Any questions for Director Johnson? I just want to say I appreciate this illustration because I like how the capital improvements plan is the screw on the bottom of the light bulb with which none of these plans will ever light up with the money doesn't end up funding them.
And they all don't get activated at one time. I know we've talked about that, and we will discuss that very in depth, when we do your debt service analysis.
This one's on a dimmer switch.
Yes. So to speak, yes. But making the way for forward investments has to have a plan of action and a commitment to the future. How and when do we activate these things? And a lot of times, having them poised and ready for when funding opportunities show up, that's the heaviest lift that a lot of jurisdictions just don't have poised and ready when those grant opportunities do open. And we've learned over the last couple of years, there's a variety of funding sources we can go after, and usually those windows of time are very, very short. Not like what they have historically done.
Yes.
Usually you see them revolve on an annual basis. Nowadays, we're lucky to get anywhere from a 3-month to a 6-month window of time, just when the word gets to us, to know that it's available and then to have something ready. So
So this is doing our homework, being ready to apply for those grants.
absolutely.
Well, it's like they say, the more you prepare, the luckier you get.
Again, helping illustrate what's happening and where this all starts to funnel down to.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you very much, Director Johnson.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've got a lot of things on tonight's agenda, so we'll see you again. All right, next item of business is approve agreement with Barge Design Solutions, Inc. for a scope of work to study right-sizing Ashland Terrace and developing a school zone around Point Christian Academy located at 4000 Dayton Boulevard, resolution number 24-1751. Director Tate.
Mayor, Commissioners, this again is one of those planning efforts that Director Johnson spoke about that is ongoing and is needed. A little history about how this came to be. In 2023, I received a phone call from someone saying that they were going to put a school at Red Bank Baptist Church called Point Christian Academy. So that was kind of a surprise because I think when I got the call, we were like 2 or 3 weeks out from school starting that year. And it started off with a kindergarten. I believe they had first grade. Now they go through third grade this year. So I contacted Weiser, who we had an on-call service agreement with. They looked at the area and said they would do some work, and then they got bought out. I think they kind of dropped us, and I never got any feedback from them other than giving them the initial go-ahead. We never paid them anything, so we're not out. And from that, we moved on. I did some research and found out that a municipality has the authority to establish school zones, but there's some requirements that have to be met. One of those being that the elected body has to determine speed limits in the school zone, whatever the school zone might look like. And so I reached out to Barge and asked them, for their help as part of our on-call service agreement to help us find out what a school zone around Red Bank Baptist Church, 4000 block of Dayton Boulevard would look like, because there's several side roads and connecting roads up through there and highly traveled roads, to say the least. And then staff began talking about, since we're spending this money to do this, to look at right-sizing Ashland Terrace. So I spoke with Barge and asked them if they would add that to the scope of work. Now, what they're going to do is they're going to do a study and give us some feedback on the feasibility of right-sizing the road, possibly straightening Ashland Terrace, straightening the curves out, depending on the right-of-way that we own. There's several factors involved with right-sizing Ashland Terrace to the city limits from Dayton Boulevard, establishing a school zone safety zone around the school, and what a school safety zone speed limit may look like as it pertains to Ashland Terrace, Dayton Boulevard, and the surrounding back roads that connect to the property. And so for this resolution, what we're asking for is your approval for the money for $44,500 for Barge to conduct this study, and then they will provide us with 3 deliverables. They will provide project management coordination, data collection, and field review, analysis reports, and exhibits. And then where this will lead us to is hopefully it will open us up to many, many options that we can do. A lot of this work, some of this work would be done by Public Works. I'm assuming that, or not assuming, I'm expecting that once this is done, Public Works will take the lead in establishing the school zone by putting up signs and appropriate lights and things that as they're identified by Barge. But then there's the further efforts as far as planning initiatives that we can take a look at what they produce, and that would lead to grants and other sources of funding that we have the data to back up what we're asking for, so we can proceed with some of these other efforts.
Okay.
Any questions for Director Tate? Right, I assume there is funding, grant
Oh,
funds
yes.
out there available for school
Well,
zone related projects.
I reached out to the MPO and asked that question, and they said they're not aware of any.
Okay,
But they said there could be some
at the
options.
moment.
Right, but, nothing can be determined until we figure out what we need, then they might be able to place it somewhere. But, I'm looking at this to be a low grade cost for the school zone. Like we would do anything else, pedestrian crosswalks and lighting and timers.
Mr. Granum, do you have something to add?
Yeah, Greg, would you also comment on potential multimodal and postage speeding?
Yes, I intend to do that. As also part of this grant, there's some other efforts that the city is involved with. One is Blue Line Solutions, Blue Line Solutions, that establishes speed detection in school zones only. But there's some official work that has to be done. There's some studies that have to be done, and then the elected body has to determine what a speed limit looks like in that school zone. And so this effort will also support that effort, as well as I mentioned before, right sizing Ashland Terrace based on traffic studies. And
Now, Ashland Terrace is, I've heard from our police department, one of the most crash prone sites in our city.
I think we had one there.
That's correct. We had several today.
When I was out door knocking, there's some apartments that overlook the Ashland Terrace State Boulevard intersection, and some of the residents sit out on their porch and count the crashes. So I imagine any coinciding safety improvements that could be made to this intersection would be very beneficial.
As the city manager mentioned, BARS will be able to tell us too, after their study is completed, if there's potential there for multimodal improvements in that area. We have a sidewalk on the south side, nothing on the north side. Of course, no crosswalks except right there at Ashland Terrace and Dayton Boulevard.
Right. And straightening out the curves, that's one of the potential modifications could improve safety as well.
That was one of the points that I immediately brought out. And while I had them on the phone talking, they looked at it and they said, maybe. So I'll wait their study and their findings on that to see what we can do.
Right. Any other questions for Director Tate? Okay. Thank you very much, Director. We'll have Director Johnson back in the hot seat, and y'all will hop skip a few times. Our next item of business is 3 contract amendments for Barge Design Solutions for TDEC Grant Stormwater Asset Management Plan to include the Detention Pond Rehabilitation Project, Resolution Number 24-1752.
As you stated, yes, the resolution presented is to approve a total of 3 contract amendments to the existing professional contract services we have for Barge Design. It's authorized additional expenditures specific to the encapsulated portion of Stringer's Branch. For one is some specialized imaging of the stream's encapsulation. Unfortunately, because of its size, its length, it's not anything that you typically would set a person down. Obviously, you have confined space issues, and simply for trying to get the technology to run the length of that was not possible. So this did require some advanced technology to be able to give us an image of what that looks like. The second part of the 3 contract amendments is for, again, specific to the encapsulated portion. This is for necessary deed research. We have several commercial parcels that are uniquely tied to Stringer's Branch and their property. So again, this is just doing some homework, getting this information available to us now for a point of time in the future. Unknown at this point, but that information will be relevant. So again, utilizing the grant and the mapping and the contracting we're doing now, that was deemed to be relevant information we needed. As I recall, I think there's a total of 20 parcels. Don't hold me on that one, but I think it's around 20 parcels total. Additionally, the 3rd contract amendment is for design services and construction oversight for the rehabilitation of the existing retention ponds at Lido Park. Barge will provide the engineering design for the project, for which the city will release an RFP for the actual construction work to occur. Once a contractor is selected, that contract will come back to commission for approval and execution. So we'll have more details and we'll have a better understanding of what does that design look like and what is that cost going to be. This is one component of our original grant application that dealt with construction projects. So what we presented to them, they did deem it was necessary for us to take a look at that one, and it was included in some of our grant funding.
Okay. Well, this falls right squarely into one of our 5 commission goals
Yes.
to improve our stewardship of Stringers Branch.
Yes. I'm hoping, when we start wrapping things up, I'd say we're probably about 80% of a draft document. That was a requirement. Matter of fact, we just sent it in today. TDEC does have to review that, percentage of the document to make sure that it's hitting those marks that not only we said we would do, but it complies with the state requirements. If you recall, we did acquire, the jetback truck early on. So now we're doing the asset, mapping and management plan. The third component of that is the construction, and that deals with the White Oak retention pond. So we're wrapping up and checking off all of these boxes that we initially engaged to perform.
Can you remind me of when that detention pond was created?
Well, that's going to be part of the work that we're gathering now.
Okay.
There's 2 ponds,
Yep.
and they are separated.
Yep.
From what we understand, one is they both function as retention, which means they hold water year round. The lower pond, I think, was to gather any potential runoff coming from the closed landfill. That's where testing and sampling has been able to be performed. We have since closed that project.
That's right.
We're no longer permitted through the state. They deemed
That's
it to be a closed feature. The upper pond has performed historically, from my understanding, as almost a sediment and erosion control pond for upper development in the area many years ago. So unfortunately, at the close of that, I don't believe that there was an exchange of responsibility, and so it has pretty much developed into what we have now. They've not had any remediation work done, which means they've not had any sediment removed from them, nor have we had any specialized evaluation of the drainage structures that are there. So again, through this design evaluation, we will take a look at, do we need to retain them as they are? We believe that we can actually convert those into detention, which will allow us to flatten and widen to where it does not hold water year round. It will hold water when we have storm events and then slowly release into Stringers Branch in compliance with our stormwater asset mapping plan. So our team will be able to put those features together and then give us a design plan and a recommendation.
Okay. Any questions for Director Johnson? All right. If not, then our next item of business is also hers. Approve participation with the Buy Board Cooperative Purchasing Program, Resolution number 24-1745.
Thank you. In compliance and continued compliance, obviously, with the city's procurement policies and in efforts to increase workflow efficiency, participation in cooperative purchasing programs is a critical resource and a sound practice. By partnering with my board, which is a similar in nature to Omnia and Sourcewell cooperative agreements we already have in use, this additional procurement resource enhances the city's ability to both effect operations and cost effective with public dollars.
Excellent.
I was gonna ask if this replaces or
It just
goes
enhances,
along
adds
with,
to- it adds to all the other resources we have.
and the
So each
leases.
individual is a separate entity.
Okay, and there's no cost to being a part of it.
No cost for participation.
Quite the length of what you can bid for or go after.
Yeah, it really helps to put it into perspective. Individually, when we bring a RFP, if we have a project that we put out to bid and we want to get quotes back for them, one of the benefits of a cooperative is they've already done that heavy lift. So we almost have the à la carte option of what are we looking for, what have they already procured. Not all 3 do the same areas of focus. So we may go to Omnia for one particular item and then to Buy Board for something completely separate. So again, it just opens up that portfolio of available resources for us on.
Is this for services, products, both?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Well, that not only should help save the city money because they have pre-bid pricing available, but also time because we don't have to wait for the required time periods for bids to be open in order to place orders.
Correct. And one of the key components before we enter into one of these cooperatives is we need to be able to see the documentation trail. Again, when you start looking at audits, especially when you look at single audit for federal dollars, we have to be able to document if we didn't do the public solicitation, we need the documentation that they did. And these entities provide that documentation to us through our city attorney to make sure that we are in compliance and can have access to those when we need them.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, that this doesn't change our commitment, our responsibility to come back to you for certain thresholds of purchasing. So this just allows us to more quickly get to the item in a appropriate procurement modality, but the thresholds still exist at the commission level, regarding when we have to come to you for a decision on an item, on a service or a piece of equipment. So that doesn't change at all.
And these solicitations go nationwide. A lot of times when we're a small municipality, we don't have easy access to every publication award that's out there. It would cost us a fortune just to advertise with a lot of where they have already done.
Spend more than you save and the reduced bids. Commissioner Fairbanks Harvey, you had a question?
Sure, thank you. Do you know of other municipalities or others that use buy board?
My past experience with Hamilton County, all three of these have been viable options. And so I'm assuming a lot of jurisdictions that do participate in cooperatives strategically add on these layers as they go.
Right.
Sometimes it's a learning experience when you first start engaging, but once you figure out how to navigate the waters, it's a smooth process.
Thank you.
Well, no, I was just gonna say, just the whole, the thing is, it saves you from having to put it out for bid. Everything that we want to spend that's over, well, I forget, it's a ridiculous amount of money, but I mean, we have to bid almost everything. I remember it used to be $650 and then it was, you know, so.
Raised it to like 900 or something because they couldn't buy a set of tires for that.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So, you know, it's
It's up to $24.99.
it streamlines the SAF's process is more so than, right.
Mayor, if I could add something else that's a benefit to this is on the business side too. It reduces their cost of doing business on their side, getting the word out. Coincidentally, Director Tate and I were having a meeting earlier today with a service provider who was interested in doing business with the city of Red Bank. And it turns out they're listed on buy board. It was completely serendipitous, had no connection to this effort. This agenda item had been long established. But there was an example of a private industry, and these cooperative service agreements tend to have ecosystems that they support: healthcare, education, infrastructure. And so the businesses aligned in those ecosystems tend to get enrolled in those cooperative purchasing agreements that service that ecosystem all across America, regionally and sometimes nationally. So this particular service provider wanted to move in that infrastructure ecosystem. They had already enrolled in buy board. And so if this comes to pass, that would be a easy path for us to reach out and an easy path for them to do business with us. So it really is a win-win on both sides of the contract agreement to be enrolled in these various cooperative purchasing agreements.
All right. Any other questions for Director Johnson?
No, excuse me. I do see automotive supplies. Does that mean like truck supplies or car supplies possibly?
They're available. They are. More importantly, vehicles are available through those.
Yeah, I see a motorcycle too. Police motorcycles. Anyway, I'm amazed with this.
Don't
thing.
Don't give the chief any ideas.
I know. We got a bicycle.
I'm just kidding.
I like the list.
All right. Any other questions for Director Johnson? Okay, thank you very much. I'll welcome Director Tate back up. We have approve additional capital from the solid waste fund for price increase of new brush truck, resolution number 24-1750. Now, I believe this brush truck was approved some time ago.
In July of 2021.
All right. And it's just now getting here.
Just now, for a price tag of $173,000. And then the following year, we found out that, of course, there was a industrial recovery after the pandemic, and a lot of places had slowed back production, trucks being one of those. And I was notified the following year that there was going to be a $3,200 price increase for microchips. And so I said, well, we still want the truck, you know, $3,200. I talked to the CFO at the time, and he was like, oh yeah, you know, $3,200, you know, you're not going to get it any cheaper, or, you know. And then we roll along, and it was for a 2023 year model production. And we rolled along, and we rolled along, and International finally started production up in December. This past December, they increased their production. And then that got our truck onto the assembly line, so to speak. And at that point in time, the sales rep called and said there was going to be a price increase, and he gave us an opportunity to back out if we didn't want to pay the price increase. And I told him, I said, how much is it? And he said, I can't determine right now, but there will be a price increase. He goes, but do you want to back out? He said, I've got somebody else I can sell the truck to. People are waiting for it. And I told him no. I said, let's proceed. So here we are. I found out that he did send Randy Bell a statement back in February, I believe it was, that it was going to be going up from 177,000 to 232,000. And then when the truck came in, it came in at 210,000, which is a $33,000 price increase. And the price increase wasn't just microchips; it was microchips. But during that whole period, you know, we had a political regime change, and you know, and the price of steel shot up through the roof. And that was the largest increase, was due to the price of steel for the manufacturing industry, and that was tagged on to the price of the truck. So that's where we stand today. The truck is sitting at Public Works Garage. It already has a City of Red Bank Public Works decal on it. And as soon as I found out that there was that big of a price difference, I said, park it. So it's been parked for 2 weeks behind the shop, waiting for this night.
You should
What
have
do
driven
you
it
think,
down
guys?
there.
Debbie?
I've got at least 3 people watching the broadcast tonight, waiting to see what your decision
To
is.
find out if we're gonna have to send it back.
Right.
Yeah.
Did I read correctly that this is now a 2025
Yes,
model?
ma'am. This is a 2025. That's the first thing when I went to the shop and I saw it, and I said, is this really a 23 model? And he said, no, it's a 25. And I confirmed that. It is a brand new truck.
So that seems like a reasonable price increase.
When it was originally supposed to be a 23,
Yeah.
2023,
Yes, ma'am.
in 2021.
21.
So we couldn't get a 28? I did that right.
If we sent it back and waited for the next version, it would probably be a year 30 model.
Oh my gosh.
He said
Okay.
there's people in the queue who are.
The salesman's already asked me if we're gonna have any truck needs next year, because he already wants to put the orders in. No money committed, but he wants to put the orders in because he said the process is that slow now.
Wow.
Okay.
All right. Any questions for Director Tate? Okay. Well, we have quite a few more items left on the work session agenda, but we do not have quite a bit of time left on the work session. This is when we normally break to allow for citizen comments for items on this work session agenda. If everyone is okay with tabling the remaining items for time, these are all going to be on our 6 o'clock agenda for further discussion. All right, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Granum.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the time for citizen comments. Please observe these rules. Comments are limited to 2 minutes here in the work session. And the city recorder will operate the timer. Please respect her direction and conclude any comments that time expires. Comments should be addressed to the board as a whole, and not to a particular commissioner, the city staff, or to the audience. The commission is here to listen, not to respond or engage in back and forth, so please do not expect a reply during public comment. At this time, citizens are invited to the podium for comment. Please begin by stating your name and address.
Wade Cook, 26 Berkeley. Good evening. I just have a little concern about not so much the downsizing of Ashland Terrace, but establishing a school zone for what is essentially a private school. So I don't know if that can be broken down into, two costs, the cost for downsizing just Ashland Terrace and the cost for establishing that school zone. And I don't know if somebody says, hey, I have a school, what the municipality legality is to establish that school zone, but I can picture somebody starting the daycare, offering pre-K and first grade anywhere along Dayton Boulevard, calling Greg and saying, hey, we're gonna need a school zone. So I just think it's something just to look at, because it's a private, as Pete once said, a little skin in the game. So maybe the church ought to pony up, put a little money out to get this established. I just don't think it ought to be on the public taxpayer to establish that school zone.
Thank you, Mr. Cook.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments for any items on tonight's work session agenda? Okay, if not, then we'll adjourn and reconvene at 6 o'clock for our regular scheduled meeting. Thank you all.